or Cambridge, or no, I know there are none there. They're all here at Oxford. Okay. Unlike that, at the Orphan Products Grants Program, the reviewers are the reviewers at FDA. So the people who are reviewing it are the ones who are ultimately going to decide whether or not to approve you for marketing. So this is a great thing. It has a very high funding rate, about 30, 35% sometimes. And so it's got that unique benefit. So put that on your list of grants to apply for. It's much better than the 8% you get from our RO1s, right? RO8s, whatever they were. Okay, we just did the Q&A. There's your break. Let's get into part 2. Okay, now we're going to shift gears. We talked about orphan designation. This is kind of your first step for making it economically viable for entering the US market. We're going to talk now about getting marketing authorization. This is a different group of people, okay? Those people might interact with the Office of Orphan Products, my old staff, down in the cafeteria and talk about their weekend. They don't do stuff all together. They have very different jobs. Okay, let's talk a little bit about what FDA is. It is a beast. It is huge. It oversees about $2.7 trillion in food, drug, and now tobacco. I don't know why they added that, but they did. It accounts for about 1/3 of the US economy. It oversees more than 20,000 prescription drugs. There's about 18,000 employees at last count. We just updated these numbers, $7.2 billion. But a lot of it comes from user fees, okay? There's this thing called the PDUFA, one of the most ridiculous acronyms I've ever heard of, Prescription Drug User Fee Act, okay? When you want the FDA to approve a product and you put in your application, they'll ask you for $4.5 million. You will be exempt because you're all gonna be orphans. Orphans don't have to pay that fee, but about half of their money at the FDA comes from those fees. Somebody asked me, I think I already answered that there is no fee for orphan designation. CDER, the Center for Drugs Evaluation and Research, those are the people who handle all your small molecules. They receive 268,000 submissions each year. And I'm recommending you all make that even higher, okay? CBER, that's the Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research. They receive, 128,000 submissions per year. It's a lot of work that goes in, and I'm honored to have been part of it in my past. Oops, here we go. Okay, here's an oversimplified anatomy of the FDA and how it works. The commissioner's up at top. We got a new one coming in, it looks like. He's actually written a paper on orphan drugs previously, back in 2016. We're studying that paper pretty carefully, as you can imagine. Most of the work is done by what we call the centers. The Center for Drugs Evaluation and Research, the Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research, the Center for Devices and Radiologic Health, CDRH, CIFSAN, the Center for Food Safety and Nutrition, the Center for Veterinary Medicine, the Center for Tobacco. It goes on, actually, there's even more. And then there's some special programs. Again, remember, these people are organizationally separate from each other, like OOPD, the Office of Orphan Products Development. There's a special group called the Office of Pediatric Therapies, the Office of Combination Products as well, where you're having both a device and a drug in the same thing, and so on and so forth. And there's other supportive functions. So FDA is a reactive physiology, if you will. I remember these slides were taken from a talk I did on the anatomy and physiology of the FDA as a being. It's reactive. An application comes in and they decide on it. They don't inherently innovate new systems or think about platforms, okay? Platforms are not really our thing. We are asked, can we market this? Can we get these benefits? Can I get this designation? And criteria are applied and an answer is spit out. The foundations of FDA lie in public health catastrophes. That's where it was started, was all outbreaks and things like that. The organogenesis is based in legal mandates. For example, the OOPD came from the mandate of the Orphan Drug Act. And as laws are passed, new little pieces of the government are invented. They do not develop drugs. They do not do testing of drugs. They respond to requests in which data are provided. They don't create initiatives. They respond to crises. Now, having said all of that, the FDA is your new best friend, okay? And that's what I want to impart. We're from the government and we're here to help you. And they want to help you. And I'm going to explain to you why they actually do want to help you. So why should you have an FDA meeting? Development of drugs is a partnership. You need them and they need you. Why do they need you? They need you because they don't make any drugs. But yet it's populated by health scientists and physicians who went into this thing because they're motivated by the same stuff you are. They want to see new drugs happen. They want standards to be met, but they want to see new drugs. So the other reason to have an FDA meeting is because it allows you to dispel regulatory uncertainty. Your investors are going to have a lot of questions about what will FDA say about this? What will they say about that? What will they say about the other? And as you get rid of these unknowns by FDA responding in minutes of meetings, your asset value increases. If you make the FDA smile, if you get an orphan designation, if you get fast track, if you get breakthrough, oh my God, that would be fantastic. Your drug is worth more. Your pre-money asset value is worth more. So I'm feeling a little embarrassed because I'm in front of all these people who have these fantastic scientific ideas, and I came out of a scientific background, yet I'm presenting you with business and regulatory realities of how you make this thing into something that's worth more so that you can raise money, so that you can actually be successful in bringing it across the finish line. So there's some serious fundraising implications for having that FDA meeting. But biotechs, particularly European ones, I might add, avoid FDA meetings. They're scared, there's fear, there's loathing, and worst of all, there's analysis paralysis and over preparation. Well, if they say this, I have to say that. Just perpetual thinking when the logical mind is engaged and earnest, straightforward communication is set on the side in preference of fear of being underprepared. So let's take things from the reviewer's perspective. I used to work at FDA, okay? The bad part about working at the FDA is you got this miserable bureaucracy. Right now, it's even worse because you've got to work under Trump, okay? But the bad part is there's lots and lots of federal rules. There will still be lots of federal rules. It's a 9 to 5 gig, okay? You go in from 9, you come out at 5, and there's all these rules about it. The pay compared to working in private industry in the US, maybe a third, okay? A third, like 35% of private sector pay. There's a very high workload. You saw the number of submissions before. You got the stack on your inbox, and you got to do it the best you can. There are crushing deadlines that were coordinated with the Prescription Drug User Fee Act that you have to make. So there's a little bit of a factory nature to the whole thing. And also, you don't get much respect. In case you hadn't noticed, the federal workers right now are being characterized as sycophants who are drinking at the public trough. It's not nice, even though I happen to know most of them are good public servants, really compelled by this idea of public service. Now, the good news is it's real hard to get canned, except in the current environment. I'm not sure how that's going to work. Your retirement is pretty sweet. And here's the kicker. This is why people do this. You have this amazing superpower. Let's say you're a medical doctor. With the sweep of your pen, as a physician, you can treat thousands of people. You can do what no mere mortal can do. You can treat populations. What a rush, okay? This is your compensation. This is what you live for. Now, you also have the bad side. If you get something wrong on safety, then you get really bad karma. But this is a wonderful thing, and this thrills you if you happen to be a federal employee. But they only do that if they work with you, okay? That's the only way they can do that. Okay, so at the FDA meetings, the partners engage. Remember, as I said before, safety and efficacy is all that really matters to FDA. All of this room has a story in your heads about different things and how these molecules work and what you think you should be measuring and everything, but they want to see how do we know that it's safe and it's effective. And they also get, now for safety, we got some good news. We've got some references. We have lists of things, different kinds of preclinical tests and pharmacovigilance, which can tell us about adverse events as they pick up in clinical trials. But for efficacy, it's really their call, how they know that a drug works. It requires those kinds of discussions. Now, orphans do get some special flexibility. We talked about clinical size. What is the standard for FDA approval? It is this: substantial evidence of safety and effectiveness, end quote. Nobody heard of p-value of 0.05 in that statement, did they? Substantial evidence of safety and effectiveness. Who gets to decide what that is? FDA gets to decide what that is. There are simple checklists for safety, and I already said this about efficacy. Typically, just a single pivotal trial is required for the registration of an orphan drug, not a common disease drug, but an orphan drug. Okay, so there are different types of FDA meetings. Let's start off with the most standard. It's called a type B meeting. These types are determined by how long it's going to take them to get back to you and how long it's going to take them to set the meeting date. It's pretty much regular operations, like a pre-IND meeting just before you go into the clinic, end of phase 2 meetings, pre-NDA, BLA meetings, that's before you get marketing authorization application. These have a medium scheduling time. A type A meeting is when you have a crisis, when you're stuck dead in your tracks, when they've come out and said, oh, you're being put on clinical hold because there's an adverse event and we need to talk about how to fix that. It's the fastest time to scheduling. Type C is the wastebasket of everything else. Type D meeting is a relatively new invention focusing on just one discipline, like if you've got some niggling issue with your CMC or some niggling issue with your preclinical tox requirements. You can focus on just a single thing. And as I may have mentioned already, the Interact meeting is also a new meeting invention, which is used to be called the pre-IND meeting and only offered by CBER. But now both CBER and CDER offer the Interact meeting, and it's a blue sky meeting. It's like, come to us early and let's just talk about your whole idea kind of meeting. It's a great meeting. It puts down on minutes for your investors, again, and your potential investors. This is what we talked about. Here's how we see our way to the marketplace. Okay, there is, of course, a guide to this in your guidance. It has to be written in the proper format and all of that going forward. Formal meetings between FDA and sponsors for all these meetings. Okay, when to have the Interact or the pre-IND meeting. When I was at the FDA, and still now I say, in spite of the inherent bias of being a regulatory affairs consultant, meet us early and meet us often. These are your new best friends. Now, these meetings are not required specifically in the law that you must have these meetings to get an approved drug. Most academics who are mostly just interested in writing papers don't have these meetings, okay? Because they just want to write papers. But if you want to bring a product to the market, if you want to make it valuable enough to bring it to the market, you better have these meetings, because they're not going to know you and they're not going to trust you just based on what you send in through the mail. If you haven't talked to the FDA recently, and there are opportunities between the Interact meeting and the pre-IND meeting and other meetings, then your asset is devalued. Again, the name of this game is make your stuff worth more so people want to give you money. So what are the prerequisites? The prerequisites for an Interact meeting are fairly trivial. There probably really aren't any. And so I'm always asking people, what are they waiting for? That goes back to my cutesy little slide of fear, loathing, and analysis paralysis. That's usually what they're waiting for. Okay, there are 4 parts to any of these FDA meetings. There's the meeting request. Hello, FDA. We got this drug for this disease. We got some questions. Here's our clinical development plan. Here's our CMC, our chemistry, manufacturing, and control plan, how we're going to make this stuff. Do you agree that we're on the right track? Here's our plan, all by discipline. All of the meetings are structured by discipline. The preclinical toxicology studies, the clinical pharmacology studies, and then the clinical trial itself. That's the meeting request, asking them, can we have a meeting? And these are the things we want to talk about. This will be only about 2 or 3 pages. Second is the briefing document. Those are about 10 or 20 pages to tell you more about who we are, what we have. It might go up to 40 pages, actually. All the background information. Now, you don't want to do what some people do and send in 100 pages because you're not going to make any friends. These people have 5 meetings a day. You think they want to read 100 pages of your stuff? No, be concise. Then there's the actual conduct of the meeting. They still have meetings in person, although not very many, very, very few. There are a substantial proportion that are via Zoom, and written response only is one of the standard ways, kind of a meeting through the mail. So don't be confused by this. People do this. It's a written response only. You send in your questions. They send back their answers. You send clarifying questions. It goes back and forth. Fortunately, in the day of email, it works pretty quickly. And lastly, and most importantly, the legacy of this experience is your meeting minutes, okay? What gets put down in paper, and this is what we're going to share with the world who wants to know what's up with the FDA. Okay, so getting a meeting request, you read the instructions, tell a story, 2 to 3 pages. Don't expect them to create your program, okay? You got to tell them what you're planning to do, not ask them what they think you should do. But it's all about the questions. The briefing packet, you want to hit the balance, as I mentioned. You don't want to hand them a book. You don't want to send them a full protocol. You usually send a protocol synopsis, 2 or 3 pages saying, hey, we're going to test some people. Here's how they get in. Here's the entry criteria. Here's the exclusion criteria. Here's how we keep these bad people out that don't belong in the study. Here's what we're going to give them. Here's what we're going to measure from them. Here's what the outcome measure is going to be. So a little bit about the philosophy of FDA meetings. Get as many meetings as you can. You want them to know who you are before they go out on a limb and say, we're going to approve this for the treatment of this rare disease. They are a very busy partner, but they are your partner and they're willing to talk to you if you're willing to ask for them to talk to you. The typical opening line when a meeting starts, if it's on Zoom or in person, is, well, this is your hour. How can we help you? Boom, okay? Ball's in your court. It is not a time for a dog and pony show. It is a time for a structured conversation, okay? Not a presentation. And the more they talk, the better it's going. The more you listen, the better it's going. Listening matters more than speaking. You want engagement. You are in a partnership. You're just starting it. They don't know you, you don't know them, but they will, and you'll repeat it coming through. Beware of the loquacious scientist. Oh my God, I can't tell you. It's like herding cats. Regulatory framework matters more than somebody pontificating about the wonders of his molecules, okay? You want to be careful when you bring scientists in to carve out an explicit and careful niche for them to fill and not let them dominate the meeting. You want to talk about the regulatory framework going forward. And over preparation is hugely dangerous, okay? When you want to talk to your spouse about where we're going to dinner tonight, you want to talk to them and you want to listen to them, okay? You don't want to present to them. Same story. You got one precious hour, pick the right MC. We do that sometimes, other people do it sometimes. Set the priorities first, like the registrational endpoints. I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. Heard the KOL, the key opinion leader, CATS. Ask thoughtful, evocative questions and listen, listen, listen. And consider spontaneity. Sometimes in the conduct of these meetings, a direction will come up, will be latched onto by the review division, and you run with it together. So be open to the unexpected. This is not performance art. Okay, the meeting minutes, we talked about that, very valuable pieces of paper. Sometimes the early stages of those will appear just shortly before the meeting. You should be taking your own notes, and you have an opportunity to comment and revise. Sometimes they get things wrong and you can correct them, and you want to do that if you can. Okay, that's about meetings. Let's go on to some other designations besides orphan designation that are managed by the review division this time. Fast track, here's the problem. They get lots of stuff. You saw like a couple 100,000 submissions. Well, some of them deserve more priority than others. And if you're the regulator, you want to improve public health. And some of this stuff is just dross. So they put out a fast track. It's process designed to facilitate the development and expedite the review of drugs to treat serious conditions and fill unmet medical needs, okay? So they're trying to find what's most important to do here in the interest of public health, and they're trying to pick those out. You can apply for this designation. You probably will get it if there's nothing else for that particular rare disease. There's a new one that came in about 8 years ago called Breakthrough Therapy Designation. They are different. Breakthrough Therapy Designation is much more valuable. And I think this chart compares and contrasts the two. So fast track designation doesn't require that you have any clinical trial data. So if you just got animal model data and the thing isn't being addressed, then you can get fast track designation. But for breakthrough therapy designation, you got to show that something pretty cool happened in people that you gave this drug to. Most applications actually get fast track designation. Most applications do not get breakthrough therapy designation, which is more precious. The nature of the criteria for fast track designation is quite objective. It's quite clear, and so it's easy to know whether you will or will not be eligible for it. But the nature of breakthrough therapy designation, as we say, it kind of depends which side of the bed they woke up on, you know? It's very subjective and very hard to predict whether it will be awarded or not. The benefits of fast track designation are administrative expediencies. It's written down in a code book, said, this is how we're going to speed everything up in fast track. The benefits of breakthrough therapy designation include everything with fast track and a lot of extra FDA love, okay? So, and they go on in very vague terms defining this love, but it's clear that you're going to get more attention from the review division. The recognition in the biotech community, you get fast track, people say, oh, that's good, okay. But if you get breakthrough therapy designation, your stock is going up, your product's going to get sold, you're going to get acquired, all kinds of happy karma is going to happen to you with breakthrough therapy designation. So if you got the data, you got to apply. Otherwise, you'll never get it. Okay, endpoints. And I think this is one of the last topics I want to get to. This is the essence of how we know that a drug works. What is it that we measure? And we have to measure things that matter. So to get an FDA drug approved, you have to demonstrate, as I mentioned, substantial evidence of safety and effectiveness. And this is demonstrated through the endpoints. And it's got to actually matter to patients. As I mentioned before, how you feel, how you function, or how long you survive. Those are the three key things. Sometimes they'll add in how you're treated in the medical system otherwise. But those are things that really matter to patients. I don't have a clue what my cholesterol number is right now, okay? I don't know what it is, but I do know if I have a heart attack and get admitted to a hospital because I got an MI, that is something how I feel. My number is a biomarker, and we'll talk about that in just a second. And that is what we're going to talk about here. Accelerated approval does not refer to the common English language of this that you would consider. It's not an intuitive from the name. It doesn't speed things up inherently. It speaks to the basis of approval, not the velocity of the approval. So I mentioned it's a surrogate endpoint that's likely to predict the clinical benefits. It's obtained by review division concurrence in the conduct of meetings. So this is a pathway that you develop in the conduct of these meetings. Unlike some other things like breakthrough and fast track and orphan designation, there's not an application for accelerated approval. This is something you have a meeting, one of your many meetings with FDA, and say, could we get accelerated approval using this surrogate endpoint, which we think is indicative of the ultimate clinical passage? So it often does also involve a phase 4, that's like after we get approval for marketing, commitment. Okay, well, we'll agree that if we get this accelerated approval based on this surrogate endpoint, at the end of the day, you license us, and we'll do this extra study afterwards, after it's already licensed, to make sure that the efficacy measure that we took from the surrogate endpoint actually follows through with these patients going forward. Okay, kinds of endpoints here. This is a little bit more of it. I talked about the HIV viral load, clinical endpoints, overall survival, days of hospitalization. Those are things that patients really feel. Accelerated endpoints, things like HIV viral load or 6 months sputum culture for TB. These are things that patients can't actually feel. Radiographic evidence, those are surrogate endpoints. They might be predictive of how the patient feels in the future. And then there's intermediate endpoints like progression-free survival in cancer. By the way, progression-free survival you'd think would always matter, but it doesn't. So for example, glioblastoma multiforme, progression-free survival has no correlation at all to overall survival, believe it or not. Short-term relapse rates for multiple sclerosis. So every one of these stories is a little bit different. We're always looking for endpoints. Endpoints are the heart and soul of all drug development. I just wanted to mention the 505(b)(2) process. Some of you will know this and some of you won't. This is when you take a product, for example, for repurposing. You take a product that's already out there, and you say, oh, we're going to use this in this rare disease. Now, like I said, the standard for FDA approval is substantial evidence of safety and effectiveness. You've already got some safety data. thousands of people have been treated with this thing for years and years and years. And you already know about the manufacturing of this thing. And you already know something about the ADME, the absorption, distribution, metabolism, excretion. You know about that because those studies were already done. You don't know if it's effective in this new site. So a 505b2 is where you're not bringing, a 505b1 is where you're bringing everything to the table de novo. Okay, here's my whole package. I did all this work. A 505b2 is where I'm referring to this and I'm referring to that and I'm referring to the other thing and I'm bringing something to the table. So it's a mix of what I contribute and what I'm getting to by reference. So the reason the frog is there because you're leapfrogging over other parts of the drug development process. So your entry is facilitated by the work of others. And this just shows you that it can be anywhere on the spectrum. So the ANDA, that's the abbreviated new drug application, which is like generics, over on the left-hand side is a 505J. The traditional, the 505B1, I'm bringing everything to the table. And in the middle, whether I'm bringing 10% of the contribution or I'm bringing 90% of the contribution, that's 505B2 land, okay? I know, it's arcane. Welcome to my world. Okay, well, we have made it through part 2